All right, guys, I'm excited to be back. I'm Turner, and this is Indian Hen Outdoors. This is Alfred. Alfred, say hello. Today, we're going to discuss something that no matter how hard you try to figure it out, you're going to offend somebody. It's controversial, but I think I have an answer that maybe most people will settle on. And we're going to talk about the best hunting rifle, particularly for out west. Elk, mule deer, that sort of thing. What is the best of the best? What's the best caliber? And I think I have a pretty good answer to that question. But let's dive into it. But first, why are you not subscribed? Hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, share it if you don't mind. It really helps the channel. Also, if you haven't, check out the Lost in Stupidity podcast. It is a multi-topic podcast where we basically act like a bunch of idiots. But it's very entertaining, and there's a lesson at the end. Go check that out wherever you get podcasts. Moving on. So let's start off with, what are the parameters for a out west cartridge? We're not going to get into rifles today. I'm not going to get into barrel lengths and wood versus composite and Cerakote. I'm not getting into that today. What we're going to talk about, these are rough numbers. What I have done is I have used some ammo calculators like from Federal and some websites like ammo.com, people like that. And I have tried my best using factory loads, not hand loads. Hand loads add even more complication to this. But using factory ammo that you can buy, the good stuff, and I've been trying to cherry pick what I think is the best for each caliber. Obviously, that's a very big undertaking. However, that's what I've done, and I've got some handy-dandy drawings. You can see my artistic ability to aid in what I'm trying to say. So, for starters, what are our parameters for out west cartridge? Well, I think it has to be understood. When I say an out west cartridge, most experts agree, most hunters agree, that the ethical range for taking, we're going to use the elk as the example. Obviously, some people hunt moose, some people hunt mule deer, bigger, smaller game. We're using elk as our benchmark. Our other benchmark we're using is 500 yards. Most experts agree that 500 yards is kind of the ethical range to be shooting medium-sized game. Anything past that, a lot of people, and I agree, I'm one of those people, you probably shouldn't be shooting that far. Can it be done? Yes. Are there people that do it all the time? Yes. But as far as a benchmark and ethics, 500 yards is the capping off point for what I'm trying to show. So knowing that, that's a long shot. Now, there's a lot of places you can shoot that far out west, but let's dive into that. These are what I call the outliers. And I'm going to put up on the screen for you to see my handy-dandy drawing as I talk. But let's use what's commonly talked about as a good elk rifle out west. And I'm not picking on it, but I just want you to get the, well, let me just show you what I'm saying. So if you put a maximum ethical range of 500 yards, and I'm going to be using all these rifles with 200-yard zeros because that's what you should be doing. But with a 200-yard zero, and I've cherry-picked, I'm saying a 308 Winchester with a Barnes Vortex 150-grain TTSX bullet. I think from the numbers I was gathering from factory loads, I think that's going to be the best bullet for if I was going to go elk hunting. There's probably is a better one. I'm just going off numbers. I apologize to the elk guy that uses a 308 and he knows what the actual perfect bullet is, but I'm just going off numbers. Bear with me, people. So we're shooting factory loads, 500 yards, with as close to 1,500 pounds of energy as we can get. So let's look at the 308. As you can see on my handy-dandy drawing, at 300 yards, that puts us at only a little over 7 inches of drop. At 400, we're getting up to 21.2 inches of drop. At 500, we're at 42.9 inches of drop. And our energy has dropped to only 1,200 pounds. At 400 yards, it's barely at the 1,500 mark. It's at 1,485. So why is this important? This is not a indictment of 308 Winchester, not at all. And 308 has taken a lot of elk, can be a good cartridge, but you need to understand the range you're dealing with and some of these misconceptions. It's a flat shooting rifle. It's a good cartridge. You just need to be aware that really and truly, ethically, probably a 400 yard and in rifle, probably not 500, really past 400, we're really starting to exceed the ethical range of this. And for example, again, misconceptions, and again, I'm not picking on 308, but just let's use a 30-06 as an example. Now, I'm using for the 30-06 a 168 grain Nosler AccuBond. 30-06s love that 165 to 168 grain, and they like those AccuBonds from my research. But 200 yard zero, 168 grain Nosler AccuBond, and look at this. Can it be at 400 yards? It has less drop than the 308. Whereas the 308's at 21.2 inches, the 30-06 comes in at 20.4. Almost an inch less. We're splitting hairs at that point. At 500 yards, oh no, the 30-06 is flatter shooting. We've only got 40 inches of drop, well, 40.9, versus 42.9 with the 308. How can it be? And we're still toting almost 1,600 pounds of energy at 500 yards. Again, probably not the best tool. You can certainly do it. I mean, between the two, if we were talking about 500 yard shots, that little bit more powder of the 30-06, it's able to push that little bit heavier grain bullet, so you're going to get more energy. I wouldn't use either one of these at 500. Could it be done? Yes. Again, for me, that's borderline ethical. So I put these in the outlier. We're not going to consider them for what I would say the best out west hunting rifle. I wouldn't say 30-06. I would say from most powerful on down, roughly speaking. If you're going to hunt 350 yards in, you're going to really stalk, or you're going to be hunting in the timber and you're a crack shot, 30-06, 308. I'm going to put 6.5 Creedmoor in there. I'll explain why in a minute. People are going to get mad at me. 25-06 and 243 even. 243. A lot of elk have been killed. I'll put the name and the episode number of Meat Eater up on the screen. There was a fascinating interview about a gentleman, and he killed everything from grouse to moose living in the Yukon, and all he used was a 243. He would load really light loads for small game all the way up to heavier loads, and he would shoot moose with a 243 in the neck. But still, point being, though 350 yards in, 243, 308, 30-06, 25-06, 6.5 Creedmoor, I think you'll be just fine. And I'm just made the Creedmoor people mad, but let's look at the numbers of the 6.5 Creedmoor. Let's have a little fun here, shall we? So, and again, I'm not hating on any of these cartridges. I'm just trying to educate you. So with the 6.5 Creedmoor, again, we're going to go with a 200 yard zero. We're going to use a 140 grain jacketed hollow point from Barnes. And at 300 yards, we're already at 1,500 pounds of energy. So anything past 300 yards, we've already fell down. We're below the ethical number that we've decided on for taking an elk. At 400 yards, we've got 23 inches of drop with that bullet. That's more than the 308. At 500 yards, we've got 45.9 inches of drop. That's more than the 30-06 and the 308. How can this be? You see, again, misconceptions. The 6.5 Creedmoor is really easy to shoot at long range. It's a good, flat shooting, efficient cartridge with the right load. using a heavier hunting bullet for taking a game like elk, you're losing some speed, and it just can't carry the energy like some of these bigger cartridges can. Still a great cartridge. I would have no qualms of shooting at an elk 400 yards in, but this idea of shooting a rutted up bull elk at 450, 500 yards with a 6.5 Creedmoor, it's just not a good idea. In fact, everybody loves the 6.5 Creedmoor, and there's a lot to love. It's a great cartridge. But I'm going to compare it to a 100-year-old cartridge that a lot of people kind of dump on. Now, this is my bottom tier, my first potential candidate for best Western hunting rifle cartridge, and that's the 270 Winchester. Let's compare it to the 6.5 Creedmoor. Well, at 400 yards, you only got 19 inches of drop. At 500, only 38.1. That's flatter shooting than both the 308 and the 30-06. And at 500 yards, you're just below that energy. You're still at 1,404 pounds of energy at 500 yards. That's with a 140 grain Browning long range Game King, the polymer tip bullet. So 140 grain jacketed hollow point versus a 140 grain Game King with the 6.5 and the 270. The 270 is clearly the winner. That being said, I'm not hating on the 6.5, but it just goes to show you how misnomers and how urban legends take place in the gun community, because I've heard a lot of people kind of sell the 270 short and maybe prop up the 6.5 a little more unrealistically. But not hating on either cartridge, but this is kind of the granddaddy of them all, the 300 Win Mag. 300 Win Mag's probably killed more game out west than maybe even the 270. The 270, the 300 Win Mag, the 30-06, even 308, they've all taken their fair share of game out west. But let's look at my handy-dandy drawing here. And at 500 yards, we're at 32 inches of drop versus 38 inches of drop for the old 270. And 16.2 at 400. And that this is, of course, using a 150 grain TTSX bullet from Barnes. Now, I'm going to quit swirling your head with numbers and drops and whatever, and I'm going to get straight to the point. Here are what I call the 500 max. Let me go over my list again. 350 yards in, 243 Winchester, 25-06, 308, 30-06, 6.5 Creedmoor. Now for the big daddies, the out west cartridges. I already gave you the numbers. It gets in by the skin of its teeth, the 270 Winchester. But here are my contenders, and I'm going to paint a very good picture here. 270 Winchester, 280 Remington, 270 Winchester short mag, if you can find one, 280 Ackley improved, which is a 280 Remington on steroids. The 6.8 Western, love a 6.8 Western. It's still that same .277 caliber bullet as you get in the old 270 Winchester. However, it's a shortened case, short action with the really steep shoulder. Takes advantage of this modern technology. 6.8 Western, 7mm rim mag. Do not sleep on 7 rim mag. 6.5 PRC, which is the Magnum version of 6.5 Creedmoor. If you like 6.5 Creedmoor, I would just go ahead and get a 6.5 PRC. And then, of course, the Walking Dog 7 PRC. 7 PRC is just so impressive. You get the power of a 7 rim mag with less recoil. Now, but I've been rambling enough. What's the best of all these cartridges I've mentioned? And some of them have a lengthy history. Well, here's where I spoil it for you. With the exception of 270, it's got a bit more drop because it's at the bottom of this list. But all of these cartridges that I just mentioned at 500 yards, remember that's our parameter. 6.5 PRC, 280 Remington, 270 short mag, 280 Ackley improved, 6.8 Western, 7 rim mag, 6.5 PRC, 7 PRC, 300 Win mag, and a partridge in a pear tree. All of these cartridges on their drop are going to be within about 4 inches. Let me say that again. Depending on what load, what bullet, all that good stuff, wind, there's a lot of variables. But for all intents and purposes, we're talking about a difference in drop of about 2 to 4 inches. That's it. And all of these guns, all of these calibers from 270 up have enough energy to take an elk at 500 yards. So my point in all this, guys, stop arguing and shoot whatever you want. A good quality rifle, a good quality scope, and practice with that good quality ammo I know you're going to buy. We're splitting hairs. It's fun to talk shop. I love talking and comparing cartridges and battling them against one another and paper whipping them to death. It just doesn't matter. If you love 300 Win Mag, shoot a 300 Win Mag. If you love 7 PRC, by the numbers, it's probably by far the best of this list. But again, that's not to say that they'll work, all of them. They'll all work. They'll all kill an elk at that range. Some of them may be a little easier to shoot than others, but at the end of the day, it depends on what kind of rifle you want to shoot and what you like. So I will say this, some of these cartridges that are really cool, and I'd love to buy them, like 6.8 Western and 280 Ackley Improved, particularly, you're going to have to come out of pocket. 280 AI and 6.8 Western are really cool. You're going to have to pay closer to $1,500 for a rifle because you're going to have to jump up to something a little more bougie, if I can use that word. The newer stuff like the 7 PRC, 6.5 PRC, you can pretty much get any entry-level rifle. CVA Cascade, Savage Axis, Ruger American. So, guys, there again, you've got plenty to choose from. We don't have to sit here and say what type of M&M we want. This is like going into the M&M factory and we can pick out whatever M&Ms we want because all M&Ms are good, just like guns. All guns are good, just like M&Ms. Well, maybe not all guns. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. And if you haven't, check out the Lost in Stupidity podcast. I am your host, Turner Dahlbear. God bless.